So, welcome back to the Kids to Love podcast. Excited today to have a dear friend of mine personally, a dear friend of the foundation, Frank Barger, who is Madison County's probate judge. If you follow our social channels at all, he is certainly probably no stranger to you because as we have become a child placing agency in the last recent years, adoption certainly one of the services that Kids to Love provides. And I feel like we're in and out of your court quarterly, if not
Sure.
even more frequently than that. So I asked Judge Barger to come on because I think it is important for people to know that what we're seeing with adoptions in Madison County really is a personal effort and a personal agenda that you set forward to make adoptions a priority in Madison County.
Well, that's very true. I think that the thing that probably has the biggest impact on me as it causes that to be a priority in our office is the family that I was able to grow up in. And sometimes you don't know what you have and the blessing of that until you interact and experience what others are going through that have not had that kind of support system. And so that makes it a priority for me. I'm the youngest of 18 first-generation grandchildren. My mother's the youngest of 9 children. I don't have any siblings, but I will say that when my maternal grandmother passed, she had 52 grand, great-grand, and
Wow.
great-great-grandchildren.
What a legacy.
It is, poor farm people. But my mother really is my mother and that generation of our family, which would make the 6th generation in Madison County on my mother's side, they really are the first removed from abject poverty. And they take care of one another and they look after one another in a way that we're not programmed to look after others anymore. Mm-hmm. They're very neighborly. They're always engaged or involved in something. And so having that big family support system growing up, when I was an older teenager, I looked at it as a negative thing. I couldn't go anywhere, get away with anything. No matter where I was, there was family or somebody that knew family.
Right.
But you understand as you age how important that support system, that team, that foundation is. And it is a shame to me that we have children without that. And so for me, that's what makes it a priority. My own growing up experience, which was not a negative one, not in the least, but having been many years past that growing up season of my life, I guess I'm still growing up a little every day, but past my, childhood and being a young man, you really understand how critical that is and what kind of impact that has. So that's what makes it a priority for me. There's no child that should not have a support system and a family, whatever that looks like. And it comes in many different forms. We see it in so many forms. And you have to look past your own personal filters. You have to do what the law conveys. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the priority for me is how do we get a child into a forever family as quickly as possible. So everything that we do in the probate court system in Madison County, although I don't want to diminish any of it, nothing is as important as that to me.
And the numbers really back that up. The numbers that we've seen of children that have been moved to permanency with adoption through the probate court, those numbers have grown significantly. I know we've been part of that growth a little
Absolutely.
bit, but we've certainly seen that grow in the last several years, I guess, since it's been on our radar more.
Well, I think that growth is reflective of not only you, but your advocacy. Because folks, because of your advocacy, your promotion of what we do and the need that exists has certainly increased our numbers where I'm in a situation where the court has jurisdiction. We were at close to 200 adoptions last year. By the time we get to the end of this calendar year, we will have completed probably, if we stay on track, about 3,000 adoptions under my tenure. I've been on the bench since January of 2019, and when I look back, when my season serving in this role is over, this is the one thing that I'll be the most proud of. We've done a lot of work in mental health, as you're well aware of, but adoption and mental health will certainly be at the top of the list of what I'm most proud of.
So I got to tell you, mental health, since you said mental health, something that I learned, the probate court also administers passports.
Correct.
And there's a fee that is associated with that. Mm-hmm. And so the fee is at judge's discretion of how that is used and utilized. And let me just say, you could put that in your pocket and go home.
Pursuant to statute and the administrative code, yes.
But
But
that's not how you're wired.
no, we collect a $35 fee, which doesn't seem like a lot, but we collect a $35 fee for every passport application we process for the U.S. State Department. I learned many years ago that probate judges around the state had the ability to do that as long as you didn't have an elected official that was competing. And I don't say competing, but in many cases, the circuit clerk oversees or serves as a passport application site. Our current circuit clerk, who does a tremendous job, had decided she didn't want to do that, didn't have the resources, the manpower to do it, and I chose to pick that up. We can keep that fee pursuant to statute and the administrative code, which is mind-blowing to me. Since 2019, we've averaged close to about $200,000 a year in that $35 fee. And I'm paid appropriately. I don't know that anybody ever thinks they're paid enough, but I think that I would be improper for me to keep that. And so we created a situation in late 2019 once we got things going. I took office in January, and by September of October of that year, we were a passport application site for the State Department, and we began taking those passport applications. And so that $35 fee, 100% of that goes into a fund that is managed by the county commission. None of it is spent or used unless I go to them and convey, here's what we're doing, here's how I want to invest it. They approve it. That money bypasses me. It never comes into my hands, never comes into my department. And so it keeps that clean and neat. It also lets me be very transparent about how it's being used. But we've used that to develop our assisted outpatient treatment programs. And also now, as we have received grant dollars and that program is for the most part, relatively well funded, we're able to do some other creative things with that work that helps with the pipeline, that helps do preventive work or helps individuals get across their mental health barrier in a much quicker fashion.
And what I love about that is I wasn't aware of all the intricacies of this until last year when you said, I want to partner with you when we were really growing our trauma therapy team and offering trauma therapy, because it's not just for kids in foster care, it's for anyone in the community. Mm-hmm. And with what you see and those you see in the court system, mental health is such it's just a crisis in every community. Our community is not immune from that. And you said, I want to be able to utilize some of this fund to help provide scholarships to those in our community that otherwise may not have accessibility to top of the line or any mental health,
Correct.
Let alone the level of counselors that we have here. Mm-hmm. And that has just been such a blessing to so many individuals and families.
Well, of the folks that we see in the involuntary commitment process, and of course we have individuals that we see sadly on a repetitive basis, but generally those that we're seeing the first time they've had a mental health break or they're in a crisis, it goes back to something that they experienced in childhood, mm-hmm. in their very early development. That's not always the case, but I would say 75% roughly of the cases that we see are based on something they experienced at a very young age or a very a difficult or trying age, if you will. So we're trying to divert folks from that pipeline so that they don't hit bottom, so that they don't alienate their support system, and so certainly they don't end up in front of the court. AOT, assisted outpatient treatment, which is something that we were only the second county in the state to implement this. What we do is a little different than what went on in Baldwin County. They're doing what needs to be done and serve their community well. We're doing what we need to do and serve our community here well. But what that's allowed us to do is reduce our recidivism among our census of folks that we see in the court for mental health. When I took office, we were at the national average, which hovers around 55%. Mm-hmm. I think we were 56% in 2019. Our recidivism rate today is less than 20%.
That's huge.
And so creating that support system, because AOT for us is 150 days of intense case management where we're monitoring medication, doctor's appointments, therapy appointments. If they need to be plugged into any kind of resource available, we're doing that. We've seen young people finish certificates and move on to good employment, finish school, work on school. We set goals with them, and it's amazing what 5 months can do to change someone's life. Mm-hmm. And it is a rare occurrence that we see somebody that's gone through AOT and completed it fully come back to us, which thrills me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, in the demographic that you have in that program, just really correlates the demographic we have. Our kids and those clients, I guess, for another word to call them, sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. And you have to have someone that steps in to hold their hand, navigate the system, to be a mentor, to be able to break that cycle.
Well, folks, generally by the time we see folks, they have alienated the support that they have. And it's either that extreme or it's the first break. And as you're well aware, we have a handful of higher education institutions in our community. And what we see commonly are kids that are in their first year of college, too much stress, that kind of thing, and have a wonderful support system, truly, but it might not be here. Or it might be this is truly their first mental health break or mental health crisis, and their support system doesn't know what to do. So we see both ends of the spectrum. Those are fewer and far between than those that we see that have really had a struggle for a long period of time.
Mm-hmm. So the funds, and I just think about some of the clients, not to divulge details, obviously with HIPAA, but I think about the clients that we see. I can't imagine where they would be without coming in our doors. I mean, just I get to do the EMDR with clients, and just the changes I've seen with clients, with first responders. It's a game changer.
Well, and it's not just about the fact that someone needs services, it's the availability of services. Mm-hmm. We have some wonderful, high quality, some of the best in the world. Of course, I'm a little prejudiced. This is home. So I'm a little prejudiced towards anybody in our community that's serving well. But it's accessibility to those that are available and do quality work. Mm-hmm. We are certainly in a position, not only here, but at a national level, where we are in a crisis with folks that specialize in mental health. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a social worker, a therapist, a psychologist, we are at a bare minimum of what we need. And so it's not that we don't have services, it's we don't have enough of it. And so folks that do not have a support system or not plugged in, it takes them that much longer to get in to see a good therapist, mm-hmm. A good psychologist, psychiatrist. And so what you're doing here with Kids to Love, what you're doing with mental health is extremely important, because it gives those children, those families, immediate access. And it can take 6 months to get in to see a reputable therapist here in Madison County. And that's great for those folks that are doing that work and that they're always going to have some work, but it certainly has given our community a backlog of folks that need support, need services, and don't have quick access. Not everybody has the Cadillac of insurance that we're fortunate to have the support system that we have, and to be able to help them navigate and then here plug them in directly with a provider is amazing to me.
And, we do a lot of work. Since we've been able to successfully privatize foster care, we do a lot of work building relationships and working directly with judges. And so when your team calls and makes a referral, that goes to the top of the list. We have several judges that are now court ordering trauma therapy for children in the court system. Mm-hmm. And, our team knows that becomes priority, because to me, if you guys on the bench are seeing the need, and it's to the point where you're asking us to come in, we know that we are 1 or 2 decisions away from a really bad day. And we're trying to intervene and get that before they need that next level of care.
It's a shame that you've had to create the system that you've created. I'm grateful every day for you. That you and your team, and I know you do the same thing. I get to be the face and voice of what the probate court does a lot, probably too much, but it's the staff and it's the amazing team they have that push things along. And I know you have created and put together a pool of talent within this organization that's mind-blowing to me. Not to name names, but I'm aware of an executive that walked away from a very high-paying, really good gig because their heart is in this work. Mm-hmm. And that's not the only story among your staff. I'm fortunate to have that as well. I think that what concerns me is that we've had to create this microsystem in our own world. What you're doing should be replicated throughout the state. It is a model. It shouldn't be a model. It is the model. It should be looked at by our state welfare system for children. And not only that, our state welfare system for our aging and at-risk older individuals. We are missing the boat by many, many docks, by many, many nautical miles on what we should be doing for our children and our elderly and incapacitated adults.
Yeah, we are, and you're right. We have such a phenomenal team, and I'm so grateful. I am the face, but so many people have caught the vision. They're excited about how we're serving, and even as we speak, we have a vehicle on the road from children that were picked up in another part of the state today. A 5-year-old, 9-year-old sibling group that we're able to keep together. And I came out of a lunch today, and I'm just catching up on our GroupMe thread. So I get pictures of them with their Chick-fil-A because they were hungry. So, of course, can't reach them if they have empty bellies. So we fed them, God's chicken, Chick-fil-A.
That's right.
And so, and then they're on the road here. And what I love about our team is, so 2 of our team went down to get these children, pick them up. They're headed back. The rest of our team is in the warehouse. And so it's like, what do you need today? What size do they wear? What are their favorite things? Easter's coming up. Do we have Easter clothes for them? Is it? And then it's the question.
And Lee, that's what blows me away, because when they get here,
yes,
when they enter your facility, when they enter one of your housing programs, it's going to be coming home for them. It's going to be what you and I were fortunate to experience growing up. I'm going to go back to team for a second. I want to just convey something that I think is humorous. I might be the only one that thinks it's humorous. But you recently had a trip to Israel that was really more of a personal mission and something that you wanted to enjoy and experience with a group of other leaders in our faith community, and had some trouble getting back after our conflict. But the whole time we were praying for you, worried about your safety and the safety of the large group you were with, and I knew a few other folks on this trip, on this mission, and Regina Carter, who is my chief clerk of case management, said, "Tell me what's going on. Why are you so concerned about Lee?" And I said, "Well, this is why." And she goes, "Well, have you stopped to think about her husband or the girls?" I'm like, "No, I haven't, because I can't do the work we're doing without her." So I'm worried about her getting back, and then I'm worried about Jeff and the girls.
That'll be
so
fine.
Yeah, I don't want to continue to do the work we do without you and your team being involved. We wouldn't have had a lot of the success we're having without you. You're part of our team unofficially.
Well, and I appreciate that, because when I call Regina or Tammy, these are all people that are on a speed dial, both of them. But last time I was in a meeting and Tammy called and I didn't answer, and then she called right back. And so I knew that was almost the code of,
yes,
we need you, But also, there was one situation that our mutual friend, attorney Doug Backus, before he left private adoption, which I think I was holding on to one leg, and maybe you were holding on to the other of don't go, when he took a corporate.
Doug is one of a few, and it's improper for me to laud or recommend counsel or necessarily speak to counsel, but it's a commonly known. It's a common fact. Doug Backus is one of the best in the business as it's related to adoption, and he's one of a handful around the state, but somebody that certainly we're all partial to here in North Alabama. And he's to credit for a significant amount of the good work we've been able to do in our probate court.
Yeah, I called him and I said, "Congratulations!" like with my teeth gritted. I'm super.
It's
happy
all I can do
him.
to tell you I'm happy for you.
I know, I'm really happy for you, but don't think I still don't call him. But there was a situation, because while he was still in adoption work, he was handling our work on the adoption side, and I had texted him one day just out of the blue, and I just said, "Hey, I just want to remind you, if with our child placing agency based in Madison County, and we serve children across the state through private foster care and private adoption, but we can run those through here. And I think it was after we did an adoption in another county, and you're like, why were you doing that in another county and
Why
not
did you
here?
drive
Why did you drive
5 or
Yes.
6 counties away?
And that was our foster family's preference. They wanted to have
Certainly.
it there. So anyway, so I just sent, after I was reminded of that, I sent that reminder on to Doug. And he called me and he said, Lee, he said, this is crazy. He said, I've got a situation with a grandmother in South Alabama, and for whatever reason, they could not get this adoption done. They were trying to adopt their grandson.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, can we, they still need the home study. They still need all the legal process. So is that something that Kids to Love could do? And then we could run that adoption through. And I said, oh, this is exactly what we could do. So Shanna on our team, that, one of our many social workers, 1 week, instead of heading north to Huntsville, she headed south to Mobile and met with the family, did the home study. That family came up this past summer. And what I love is when you found out you were out of town and you still Zoomed in.
Yes.
But not only that, he asked what Malachi was interested in, and you had your staff decorate the courtroom in Minecraft Legos, because that's what this young man likes.
Sure.
So you don't just do it. You do it like we do it. You do it
We should,
with heart.
anything that we do for a child should be done as well as we can do it.
100%, yes.
We should give it 110%. And it's situations like that. And when I say this, I'm not speaking ill of my counterparts around the state, because we are so fortunate in Madison County to have the revenue that we have, the economy that we have specific to our North Alabama region. And so that provides resources to county government through the way we collect funds and distribute funds. And so the commission, our county commission, is unbelievably supportive of the work that our court does. Since I've been in office, and this was not the case for my predecessors, since I've been in office, our commission has given me to the penny of what I've asked for in our budget. We manage resources well. That's not the case in every county. And so we have a docket that is set only about 90 to 120 days out at maximum. But in a Jefferson County, a Mobile County, a larger metro, maybe without the resources that we have, and certainly in a smaller county, they can't work that fast. And so you might wait 12 months, 16 months, 18 months to see a transaction come to fruition and a final order be signed, and we can do that in 3 or 4 months. And so if the child has a connection, born here, lives here, the adoptive family is here, or the child placing agency organization has an operation in our county, it gives me jurisdiction. So that's what lets us help families through Kids to Love around the entire state. And so, and on that particular adoption, and I remember that one very well, I'd gotten my wires crossed. I had intended to be here, and we had an opportunity to go to our place at the beach at the last minute, and so I certainly took advantage of that.
Understandably
Forgetting that this was happening, and so until a week or so out, I'm like, well, we have to make this special. Because that family, and not to go into detail, but that family went through literal hell to adopt a grandchild. That's what you want, if at all possible. If it's appropriate, you want that child to stay within that biological family structure. So we've got a system, not only our state welfare system, our DHR for our children, not only are they working against the best or what is needed for the child, they don't coordinate things well with the court system. We've got court systems that are behind because of lack of resources. So it's a complicated dilemma that we have. But for me, it starts at the top. Your leadership has proven what a well-run, well-organized system can do, but also a system that's always reflective, introspective, and improving all the time. And we have forgotten that at the state level. We've got a lot of folks on the ground within our DHR system doing the work of Christ, truly, the hands and feet of Christ every single day. But we don't have the leadership that we need. We've created a lot of bureaucracy that they could argue is underfunded. Maybe the funds aren't just being used correctly. Maybe caseloads aren't being assigned correctly. And maybe our bureaucracy has gotten a little too big, and we've created way too much red tape to make something that, although very, very critical, is not as hard as our systems sometimes make it.
It's almost like they shackle those frontline workers that are trying to do it. And I know your court sees not only on the child welfare side, but also on the senior side.
Well, we see it with our adult protective services cases. My court has the ability, as probate courts throughout the state do, to handle emergency guardianship issues. And so legal counsel can choose to do an emergency guardianship, or they can seek an adult protective services order, an APS order, through our circuit court. Well, that takes longer, even in an emergency situation. And we're so nimble and can move so quickly in our court with the resources and the management team that we have that I can hear an emergency guardianship case the same day. If it's filed in the afternoon, we hear it the next morning. So that's great. And we have the ability to do that. The problem with that is we have a welfare system for our older individuals that can't move as fast as we do. Mm-hmm. And so my goal has always been to operate at the speed of business, not the speed of government. They are operating at the speed of government 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so Huntsville Hospital, as an example, we see a great deal of patients that unfortunately the court has to be petitioned to oversee their medical care. Huntsville Hospital has had to hire external counsel just to manage that component of their work because DHR is not quick enough to file an emergency petition because they consider that individual, they're housed, they're secure, they're safe, their care is being managed, and I don't disagree with that, but it's still an emergency. When someone is at that critical level of care and they need to be stepped down, we're holding a bed, mm-hmm. we're wasting resources, they're restricted more heavily, they need to be back in their community, and so we have to get really creative, and we work directly with Huntsville Hospital on those issues, just like we work directly with you mm-hmm. As it relates to adoption.
What else do you want to talk about?
Oh, gosh. I'm excited about some of the work that you've started doing with law enforcement as it relates to mental health. And so I am glad that we've been able to provide funding for children who need support, families that need support through the mental health component of your work, but I'm also excited that we're able to provide some funding for our law enforcement officers and first responders who are dealing with issues related to trauma around child welfare and adult welfare.
Well, and that is just, it's such a gap, and when we started learning more about trauma and the modalities that we utilize, that puts us then really in a national network of therapists. And so I'm always asking, what are other communities doing? What are you doing well? What are you seeing? Mm-hmm. Trying to make sure that we are really where we need to be on the radar. If others in this field are seeing something, like, I want to make sure that we've got our eyes on it at the same time. And so one of the trauma modalities that we use, ITR, instinctional trauma response, and Dr. Linda and Mary that are just phenomenal trauma specialists that have become friends through the years. Mary, for years, has really talked about these first responders. And so for me, my priority obviously was my children, our children in our care because they needed it. And then once I felt like we had gotten that under control, I started looking at the bigger picture of who else is taking care of our kids. Mm-hmm. Because I think about, there was a situation earlier this year, and not to divulge confidentiality, but there was a child that was hurt that was taken to the hospital, and it was back and forth. Medical staff saw, so you have trauma of the HEMSI workers that went in and saw the child. That transported because the child was still alive, and that's the goal, is to save their life, so they get the child to the hospital. And then you had HPD coming in trying to do an investigation of, oh my gosh, why did you move the child? And so then it becomes these, you've got the different silos, everybody has their job to do. And as I'm hearing about this, I was like, time out. What about these first responders? Mm-hmm. What about these officers? And come to find out that one of the officers had a child at home that was very close to the same age. Mm-hmm. Well, you can't leave that at work.
No,
you just can't. Mm-hmm. And so that's when we were able to start having those conversations, and your support allowed the funding to do that. And, of course, Kirk Giles and his team have been amazing. Earlier this year when we lost an officer, mm-hmm. we were standing there at roll call the next day, offering resources, hand in hand. And those officers that have come in and what they see every day in our community, you can't see what you see and just go home and forget about that.
No, you can't.
And we try to make it a priority for our team here. You can't hear what you hear all day long, session after session, without taking care of yourself. And so we've been extremely honored to walk that journey with these first responders, to know that you don't have to do it, because to me, we have to take care of those that are taking care of us. And that's who those people are.
There are still so many things surrounding mental health that are barriers to everyone, not just our law enforcement officers and first responders, but the stigma that exists. That's the first thing that my team attempts to do, and it sometimes takes a while, but is to remove that stigma and ensure the patient and their support system that this is a health issue like any other health issue that needs to be managed. So I hate when I hear someone refer to someone as being mentally ill. No one's mentally ill. They're experiencing a mental health issue. And so the stigma is still a huge part. Access, as we've already talked about. But then there are folks that are programmed a certain way. And I grew up in that with parents and grandparents of that generation where mental health issues, we take care of those at home. We don't talk about them. The family's going to step in and we're going to take care of that. And so it's, to go and seek treatment externally, or to hear, and I grew up with parents of significant faith. My faith is very important to me, but certain things you can't pray away.
Yeah.
And, God created folks with the know-how to create things and develop things that help us make it through the challenges that exist on this earth, mental health being one of them. So we try to be compassionate and remove that stigma. When it comes to our first responders, specifically our law enforcement officers, and I'm fortunate to get to work with the best of the best every day. There's never a day that my office is not interacting with one or multiple of our law enforcement agencies in Madison County. Law enforcement officers, both male and female, are programmed a very specific way. They're tough, and I can say they're hard too. And it's different than being tough. They're tough in what they handle. They have the ability, but they've become hardened in some cases. They have a really hard time opening up. They don't trust anyone because they look at everyone through a filter of good, bad, right, wrong.
Right.
And so having an outlet where our law enforcement officers can reach out, can seek treatment, can pursue assistance they need without going through the structure that exists internally, without any fear of, gosh, my superior is going to find out that I'm struggling with this. You're providing those services in a confidential way has been huge. I think if we've got any first responder listening to this podcast, it would be this: your superiors want you well too. So don't hesitate to talk about what you need.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting what you need, you reach out to my office. You reach out to Lee Marshall's office. I'll talk to the chief. I'll talk to the sheriff. We'll get you the support that you need. And if need be, we'll work to provide the resources so that you have that, whether it's access, whether it's making a phone call to get you in to see someone, or if you can't afford the out-of-pocket expenses or you don't want to file it on your insurance because you have concerns about what that will look like on your employment record, although it shouldn't have an effect. Folks are under the impression that it does, and I'm not saying that it hasn't in the past, but reach out. There are resources, and you all deserve, and when I say you all, our law enforcement and first responder families, they deserve the best support that can be offered to them.
And if you are watching, and the best way to do that is hopefortrauma.org. We've set up a website, and it's like every time I go speak to our men and women in uniform, I tell them, listen, just put John Doe on the form, and I've told our team, hey, that's mine. Like, we know who that is,
Yes.
and that is one of our first responders, or men or women in uniform, and we will get you in, and it is 100% confidential and at no cost. So please don't suffer in silence. Make sure that they reach out. We've got
and just not only for our first responders and their families, but in general, we have so many resources in our community. We are blessed to have Wellstone here. that is a trauma unit specific to mental health that you can walk in 24 hours a day for immediate assistance. We have some phenomenal direct providers of services if you're insured and have the ability and the time to plug in, but there are certainly ways to get the help that you need. Most folks simply don't know where to start.
Right. And our goal is to intervene early since we're not one of those residential providers. So hopefully you don't escalate to needing that. We do have it in our community, which is a blessing, but let's get you better on the front end.
Correct.
So we don't have all of that on the back end. Well, thank you for coming out.
Oh my gosh.
And just
as I tell folks all the time, whatever Lee Marshall asks me to do, I'll do it. And I thought about this morning, it's a busy time in my life. It's just a busy life. I've got a senior in high school this year is graduating. I have business interest outside of the court. We manage a lot of things. And so as I was getting ready and buzzing around and doing things this morning, I thought, how do you feel about Lee? What do you think about Lee? And, there are I don't trust a lot of folks. I can count. It doesn't take two hands for me to count the people that I truly have a level of trust and confidence in, but you're one of those people.
Thank you.
If Lee Marshall said, stand in front of the train, I can't tell you why, but I promise you that I'm going to push you from away from the train, I would do it. Your character is unblemished. You are laser focused on what you're doing. I believe that you are following God's plan for your life. And there is nothing I wouldn't do to help you in this organization.
Thank you.
Because I have witnessed firsthand not only your skill set, your leadership, your character, your trustworthiness, but more importantly, I've seen not outputs, I've seen the outcome of your work and your team's work. And there's some outputs that are important, like fulfilling Christmas lists and backpacks and those types of things. But the outcomes make the difference. Hearing from Willie, who I know that you use in a lot of the work that you do to promote Kids to Love in your programs, but hearing from Willie, hearing from other children, watching the outcome. Not that, yes, they got their first job, yes, they got nice clothes at Christmas. It's not that. You have created a continuum of care. You've created a forever family, even for those kids that don't get connected. And there's nothing I wouldn't do to be involved in that.
Thank you.
You're
welcome.
welcome.
So much. And
I'm sorry to yammer on.
No.
If 5 words is good, I'll use 20.
That's right, because 20 is always better. Well, and it's mutual. I mean, you and I have developed a friendship over the years, I think, through our professional work.
Certainly.
But certainly somebody, if I have to phone a friend, you're on that short list.
Well, and I'm there.
Always.
Don't call me for bail, then I'm going to question you.
Sure, no, hopefully never.
I'd do anything you needed.
I appreciate it.
Always a privilege to be supportive of Kids to Love.
Thank you. Madison County Probate Judge Frank Barger. Of course, we're going to show you many of the pictures throughout this of all the great adoptions or all the smiling faces. One of my favorites was last summer when I think we had to remove the chairs out of the courtroom because our family brought, I think, their entire church family.
We had close to 150 people in the courtroom and spilling out into our private foyer that enters into the court. And so, yes, that might be the banner of the number of people. And I remember that. Because we had to remove the chairs and we couldn't stay on the bench to take photos. I had to step off the bench and your photographer had to stand on the bench to try to get a photo of everyone.
What I love that day, there's one young
That's
lady.
what love looks like.
That's right. And there's one young lady that we've been in her life since she was 6. And she goes to church with the Pittmans, the family that adopted that day. And so, we're very protective of privacy. And I remember we were standing there and you and I were standing beside each other, and all of a sudden I just feel this, it ended up being her head at the back of my arm. And she was squirming and weaseling her way to stand in between us. And somebody said, "Oh my gosh, you can't do that." And I said, "Time out. I've got custody of this young lady. If this young lady feels confident enough and comfortable enough and she wants to stand between us,
then so be it.
Come on up here. So I just remember feeling her little head nudging and navigating to get right there on the front row. And hopefully that's another one that's going to be in your court within the next year. So we'll
Well,
stay
and I
tuned.
think, personally and selfishly, what's rewarding now that I've been at this for the length of time that I have, I've been in the court system. This year makes 15 years, been on the bench. It's hard to believe it's been going to be 8 years before too long, are the kids that come back to see you.
Yeah.
And so now I have young adults who will pop into the court because they're renewing a car tag or paying their property taxes
Yeah.
or whatever it happens to be, or they're in from out of town and they want to come in and see Judge Frank. And so that's pretty doggone cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's breaking the cycle.
It is.
And it is giving stability in our community. So thank you so much for what
Thank you for having me today.
Awesome. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.